Hello and welcome back to another episode of E-commerce Joe. In today's episode, we speak with entrepreneur Poppy Scarlett about how she quit her job to sell adult toys online. So, if you've ever thought about quitting your job to sell adult toys, this is the episode for you. Find out how she did it on this episode of E-commerce Joe. So Poppy, thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of E-commerce Joe. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
In your own words, would you like to introduce yourself to people watching?
Yeah, sure. My name is Poppy and I own an online sex toy boutique called Self and More. We are all about encouraging people to experience pleasure unapologetically and find out what works for their body.
Now, I feel like I need to straight away address the elephant in the room here. You sell sex toys, adult toys. How do people react when you tell them that? It's quite provocative. And do your friends and family know? What do they think?
Oh, everyone knows. I've talked to everyone who will listen about this. Actually, on the whole, people are really accepting of it and just curious and have lots of questions. And I think one of the things about my store in particular is that we take away a lot of the kind of seediness that people kind of associate with sex toy stores. Our products are actually on the whole quite nice to look at, and it's not just big veiny penises. So on the whole, people find it really interesting and just have lots of questions.
Why did you go down that route? Because it seems like quite an unusual thing for someone to go into.
Yeah, I guess it is. I've always had an interest in sex and sexuality and pleasure, and I've always wanted to work in the industry in some way, but never really knew how. So I've always worked in office jobs in marketing and been quite bored, to be honest with you. And then I started to realize that sex toys, despite being such a huge industry in the UK, the way that they're sold was always very kind of male pleasure focused, and there was still a lot of stigma around buying toys because of how they're packaged and how they're marketed, and there didn't really seem to be an online store that was selling them in a way that was kind of self-care items, and about having like beautiful objects that you actually want to look at and you're not ashamed of, and aside from that, like a store that didn't gender toys as well, because a lot of the kind of the big stores in the UK, it's all man, woman, and if you don't fit into those categories, or you identify in a different way, well, what do you buy? And I always found that quite jarring. So when I was made redundant a few years ago, I started researching kind of how to make my own store to try and fill this gap, and it worked. And here we are. So yeah.
And how long's the store or the business itself been going?
So we started trading in July 2019, so last year, just over a year. But I was running the store alongside my full-time job, because after I got made redundant, I got another job in marketing and was doing the store in my personal time in the evenings and weekends. And I quit my job a few months ago to do this full-time.
And did your employers know why you quit and what you were doing? Because again, I feel like that's going to be quite an interesting conversation that they're not going to be expecting.
Yeah, I had actually managed to keep it quite a secret, apart from like a few friends obviously at work knew, but on the whole I kept it quite a secret. I worked at a science magazine, so not necessarily sex toy adjacent. And yeah, I quit obviously during the pandemic, so working from home. So I had to have all these conversations over Zoom to explain where I was going and what I was doing. And there were a lot of awkward laughs and silences. But I think what you find is that if people aren't sure how to address it, they just stick to asking you questions specifically about the logistics of the business rather than the intricacies of the juicy stuff.
I'm going to have to now change all the questions that I've got planned, because otherwise you're going to think I'm very awkward. To talk about the logistics, how did you actually get started, and what was that like? Because I suppose you're working a full-time job. it is almost a full-time job from people I speak with. And when I was running my own online businesses, I find it quite difficult to do part-time. Um, yeah, what was that like and how did you get started?
So I started obviously with researching the products, and spent a lot of time like looking at competitors and seeing what was working well and what had good reviews, and then actually testing all the products, and calling my friends and stuff like that to make sure that everything was good quality. And yeah, it took kind of a few months of building the website and writing the product descriptions, and like creating content and all of that stuff. So there were a good few months of just research before I even launched anything. And so in the beginning, I bought my stock, and held it myself, and I was fulfilling orders on kind of like a small volume for the first few months. So you can imagine me like commuting into Covent Garden with a bag full of vibrators ready to go to the office. And then as it started to grow and we started to pick up interest, it got to the point where I realized I can't keep just fulfilling the orders myself. I need to expand this. And that's when I started drop shipping as well, and bringing on extra channels and extra drop shipping suppliers to meet the needs that we were seeing. So yeah, it's kind of developed like that over time. And now we do a bit of both. There are products that I hold personally, and then there are products that we drop ship.
Cool. And for the benefit of anyone actually watching that doesn't know what drop shipping is, what does that mean?
Yeah, drop shipping is when a customer places an order with you on your website, and you take that order and you pass it on to a third party to fulfill directly from them. So it cuts out the time of you having to actually pack up that order and send it off, because you've got a different company doing that for you effectively.
And am I right in saying that it also means that you're not actually having to invest a lot of money in holding on to the goods, because you only buy them when the customer places the order and then you pay the supplier for them? So you just kind of make profit rather than
Yeah,
shelling out loads of money.
exactly. So for us, it was just a way to manage cash flow, because it's not like we had any kind of like investment or like a big pot of money sitting around. It was all kind of growing organically and expanding, I guess, at like kind of a slow rate compared to some of the online businesses that you see online. But for me, that was like a sustainable way to do it around my job as well, just kind of taking it day by day and making the most of the dropshipping platforms.
And before we talk about, I suppose, your suppliers and how you find the products and things like that, the brand itself, Self and More,
Mm-hmm.
where did the name come from? And I suppose, what does it mean? I know you touched on it earlier, but...
Yeah, I guess for me, I wanted a name that wasn't like overtly sexual, and wasn't kind of off-putting to people who are potentially like new to sex toys, or a bit wary of the kind of sex toy industry. The name kind of centers around the idea that you are your own most important sexual partner, which is something that I think has been drilled into us during the pandemic as well, because you have literally had to be unless you live with your partner. And the kind of the and more element is around kind of using what you learn about your own sexuality and your own body to have better sex with other people. So that's kind of where the name came from.
That's cool. And your customers, do you have a particular demographic? I know you said that, what sort of demographic are your customers?
Yeah, sure. So the way that we market ourselves and the way that we want our store to be is accessible to anyone, no matter what kind of genitals they have, how you identify, your gender, your age. But that being said, our customers do tend to skew towards people who identify as women, who are aged kind of between 25 and 35. But there's quite a lot of leeway on that, all different ways. But that is our core customer base. And I do tend to wonder, is that because I fit within that demographic as well? And I think you attract the kind of people that you are sometimes when you put your face on business.
I guess that makes sense, especially if you're marketing in a certain way. You know how to market to people that are quite similar to yourself. And do you get many repeat buyers?
Yeah, we do now. Obviously, we're just over a year, so sex toys obviously aren't the kind of product that you're necessarily purchasing every month. Obviously, there are some people who come back to us 5 or 6 times over this period, when they must be having a lot of fun. But Yeah, I think our repeat customer rate tends to be around 15% at the moment. But there are kind of like a core base of customers who do come back repeatedly.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's not the kind of purchase, as a lot of the things we sell as well are luxury products. So most people aren't going to be spending £100 on a sex toy every month. Some people are.
There's you kind of touched on it earlier with the saying about testing the products and things. Me and my friends, when we were running Amazon FBA businesses, we half joked for a while about like, oh, maybe we should go into this. Like we were buying a lot of goods from China, like kitchenware and like bog standard things, nothing exciting like that. And we joked about it. The reason we didn't, one of the serious reasons we didn't end up looking at it was because of like safety concerns. You know, these toys are going inside people, lubricants are obviously going on people. We didn't want to go anywhere near that. How did you deal with that?
Well, one of the things about our store is that everything we stock is body safe. And that's a big thing in the sex toy industry, because sex toys as a whole are actually pretty unregulated. And for a long time, lots of toys had lots of nasty chemicals put into them. There's a lack of education around what a body safe material is. So, for example, toys like dildos, vibrators, you want them to be made out of a material generally that is non-porous and doesn't absorb bodily fluids and can be properly cleaned. So a lot of the stores in the past stocked a lot of products that weren't body safe, kind of just cheap from China. Yeah, you know, like your jelly dildos are like a classic example. And for us, it's always been really important that we don't go near anywhere like that.
Yeah.
So that's our first promise, first of all. And it's the same with lubes. So we only stock natural, organic, like the ingredients need to be properly tested.
You mentioned body safe. Is there actually a definition of that? Like, what does that mean? Because I don't know what that is. I imagine a lot of people watching don't know what that is.
So body safe just means that it is safe to put in your body or on your body without any negative side effects. So in terms of toys, this can mean materials. So body safe materials tend to be materials you can sterilize and that don't contain any nasty chemicals that can interfere with your body. And the same with lubricants. When we talk about body safe lubricants, we tend to mean ones that don't have like artificial preservatives or sugars that might mess with your pH balance, for example, and result in something like thrush. So for me, it's always been really important that we can promise our customers that everything we stock is body safe. So that's the kind of the minimum that we guarantee. And then we only stock reputable brands as well. So obviously in the sex toy industry, you can buy sex toys incredibly cheap for a couple of pounds from China.
Yeah.
But how long will they last? What effect are they going to have on your body? Are you going to have to replace that toy in a few months? So we only stock brands that we believe in and that we can vouch for. It's a really hard job, but obviously someone has to test all of the toys that we stock. Terrible, hate doing that. But obviously I only have certain body parts, so I also rope in my partner to try toys that I can't. And if something just doesn't fit the bill, if it's not good quality, we won't stock it, simple as. And for me, it's never really been about like making a huge profit on cheap products. It's been about providing actual quality items that I can personally vouch for.
And so your brand is currently, you're not private labeling the products, you're actually reselling other suppliers' products. Is that right?
Yeah, so we're kind of operating as a boutique. So I'm curating a selection of toys that I think are great into a collection for people to shop.
And how do you actually go about finding then these suppliers? Because like I said, when we used to sell on Amazon, we would go to Alibaba, we'd find those Chinese suppliers that you said. I imagine if you're looking for kind of reputable brands, you don't do that. How does that work?
Yeah, we don't buy anything from China or anything like that. There's actually quite a few. There's probably 4 or 5 or 6 reputable kind of wholesale companies in the UK selling most of the big brands. So between them, you can get a lot of the big brands on dropshipping services or on wholesale. Beside that, there's a lot of companies in Europe as well. So for me, it's always been about a mix of those kind of popular brand names that people kind of know and look for. So brands like Satisfyer or Lilo or Le Wand, which are all kind of reputable, good quality toys. But it's also been about expanding our selection to include kind of smaller companies, often female led, and provide a place for people to buy those in the UK. So I think a big part of how we've achieved our growth is by stocking some brands which had already gained quite a lot of recognition through being sold in stores in the US. So brands that already had quite a lot of awareness and people wanting them, but nowhere to buy them in the UK. So I've imported those and added them to our product selection and sold them here.
Oh, that's interesting. So you're one of the only places to get certain products, because I was about to ask you what differentiates you between like your boutique and others. If you're reselling products that, you know, a certain supplier has, why would people buy them from Self and More?
Yeah, I think that's a very key thing because it is a very saturated market. There are hundreds of sex toy stores. I get a new one following us on Instagram probably every week based in the UK. So it's always been very important to keep a chunk of our products as things that are either exclusively available for us or very scarcely available in the UK. So we have probably 4 or 5 brands, I guess, which are exclusive to us. And it's great because obviously most of these companies are based in different countries, so they have already their own customer base coming to them and asking if they can have the products in the UK, and they send their customers to us. And I think part of what's enabled us to do that is because we've spent so long building an established brand online, because I put my face to the business as well. It's not just another random dropshipping sex toy company. There's a person behind it, and people, I think, really respond quite well to that. And especially these other companies, and they can see that we're kind of trustworthy and we really believe in what we're saying and what we're selling. They feel comfortable selling with us, which has been great.
And talking about putting a face to it, who deals with your customer service? Is that you? Do you have someone else that does it?
Me at the minute. I basically do everything. So yeah, as we're growing, obviously I'm thinking about bringing in more people to take different roles. But I think it's certainly been quite interesting doing everything, and especially being that point of contact for customers as well, because a lot of the time they do think that we're a much bigger company, so when they get through to me they're always quite surprised, and I think they're a little bit kinder to our customer support as well than they would be to a big faceless brand, because they know there's someone on the end who might get upset if they shout.
Oh, that's nice. And what sort of customer support or service do you have to actually give? I mean, do you have many returns? It seems like it's not the sort of product that people would send back.
No, I think probably compared to other industries, we have a very low return rate. Most of our queries come from people, say if their toy has broken or become faulty, or they need a charger or something like that. And then most of the toys that we carry have manufacturer warranties, so we're able to handle those quite easily. And yeah, we don't accept returns on products that have been opened for obvious reasons. And people tend to be quite understanding about that. I think we try and provide quite a lot of information about the toys on the website and on our social channels. So I think people are able to make informed decisions. And it's not like fashion where you're buying 7 different sizes and colors to see what looks best. You have to put some thought into it and buy something you think will work.
We've just had Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and yeah, those are the 2 biggest, I suppose, online days in the year. Were they big for you? And I suppose for anyone watching that doesn't know, are you able to describe what Black Friday is and what Cyber Monday is?
Yeah, sure. Black Friday and Cyber Monday are shopping events, but what was it popularized by? Was it Amazon? It feels like an Amazon thing.
Yeah, I think it might have been before then, but they've just made it huge.
Yeah, I think it's the point of the year where consumers are thinking about Christmas presents and investing in kind of bigger price tech items in particular. So retailers offer a discount to kind of capitalize on that increased traffic and demand, I suppose. And for us, it's an interesting one because we don't typically offer really big discounts because the margin on the products we're selling, we're trying to sell them at a competitive price. So our prices aren't necessarily overinflated to the point where we can run really big discounts.
Yeah.
And also, like we're an ethical brand. We take quite an ethical stance on consumption and product use and things like that. So it doesn't quite sit well for us to run a big sale to get people to shop just for the sake of it. So this year we ran an offer over the course of a week, so as to take away a little bit of the stress around you've only got one day, you have to make a decision and buy it now. And we ran a discount off our kind of higher priced items to allow people to buy them who might not normally be able to buy them, because a lot of the stuff that we sell isn't necessarily an everyday purchase. And it performed well for us. But yeah, this has been a really good month for us actually in general, but we've started implementing kind of smaller offers on a weekly basis on like one special product that we've been able to provide some kind of like education and content around. So that's how we've been kind of driving incremental sales over the past couple of months anyway. So this year there's been a less of a focus around Black Friday for us.
And I guess if it's your first year where you've kind of done this full time, you won't really see the effect until after you've had a regular year, a non-COVID year anyway.
That's true. All of our year-on-year stats are just ridiculous because obviously it was our first few months of trading, so all the increases are like thousands of %, which is not actually very useful as an analytic.
And how is it you actually market to people in general? I mean, I know we spoke about it when we first met, about how like the terms of service on some platforms obviously mean that you can't go on Facebook and necessarily run a Facebook ad about adult toys, or on Amazon. Like the sex toy industry is kind of hidden away. How do you get around that, and how do people actually find your website?
Yeah, it's a good point. It is really frustrating because, for example, like Facebook Shop as a marketing channel, we just can't use, even though a lot of our products, I think, would be deemed fine to sell. They just all get blanket rejected, and that's it. And it is quite frustrating because they seem to have very kind of loose rules around what's allowed. Like erectile dysfunction ads are allowed, but ads around kind of female pleasure and sexuality aren't. So it's very frustrating. But what we've done is kind of over the course of a year is built a really nice community on social media. Instagram in particular is our biggest channel. And word of mouth has been kind of huge for us, I think, because a lot of people believe in what we're saying. You know, a lot of the content we post is around like education, like sex education that you didn't get at school, and pleasure education, and just normalizing lots of conversations around sex. Lots of people, particularly women, but I think men as well, you don't necessarily talk to your friends about masturbation, so you don't know if what you're doing is normal, and you know, you don't get that kind of sense of like, this is okay, I'm normal, I can do this. So we kind of provide a place for people to come online and have that conversation and interact with us. Like we've run a lot of kind of polls and things where people can send in their answers to questions around like how they experience pleasure. So that's been really, really instrumental for us. We have quite good relationships with influencers and affiliates on our affiliate scheme. And those two things working together have been like a huge catalyst for our growth. And yeah, they're the main things that we did, especially in the beginning, because obviously, like I said before, I was working a full-time job. So the thing that I wanted to focus on the most was the content we were creating. And it's been fortunate that it's a topic and it's a thing that people are interested in and organically want to talk about. Now, a year on, we're just getting to the point now where we're starting to explore things like pay-per-click on Google and also more traditional PR as well. So they're kind of plans for the next stage of growth. But yeah, the organic social has been a really core base for us to build on.
Just quickly there, you said influencers. When you say influencers in this kind of niche, would that be essentially like porn actors and actresses, or is that like, I mean,
It could be, but it's not for us, but it could be.
yeah,
It hasn't been so far. I guess unless you're in the kind of like sex positive bubble on the internet, you're not really aware of what's going on there. But there's like a whole community of people, a lot of them just normal people, and a lot of who are focused, we're all normal people, but you know what I mean. And then a lot of people who are actually focused on creating content about sex in the same way that we are, but like more on a personal basis. And it's this huge pocket of the internet where people just celebrate sex in a way that is actually quite wholesome and is all around education and just making people feel normal. And it's growing all the time. So what we've done is we've built relationships with people who are specifically sex bloggers. So you have lots of people who review toys, more kind of classically just on the internet, on their websites. They don't necessarily always put their face to it. Then you've got kind of bloggers and Instagrammers and YouTubers who talk specifically about sex, but not in like a porn way, more in a like just a conversational way. And then on the other side of it, you have influencers who are typically creating content around lifestyle and fashion and family life and things like that, but who also speak quite openly and vocally around toys and sex. And actually, it's those relationships that have been the most fruitful for us and have had the best results. And I think that is probably because everyone who follows the sex specific bloggers is already very aware of sex toys and knows where to go to find them. But for the people who follow the other bloggers, the lifestyle bloggers, this is all very new to them. So us being a really like approachable brand and a simple to use website and not kind of overwhelming for a beginner, I think that kind of marriage has worked really well.
and I think that's on that note, it's probably a good chance to have a quick look at your Instagram, because I think maybe if I was watching this without actually having some more context to imagine like how clean it is, you're talking about some of these things and educating it is, you've made it so quite clear.
With our Instagram channel, we try and make all the content either fit into being educational, entertaining, or empowering. So if it doesn't fit into those categories, it probably doesn't really fit on our channel. And yeah, so I mean, as you can see, it's all very kind of brightly colored and inviting. I think, you know, with sex toy brands, we kind of come to associate a sultry woman in lingerie, like lounging around with her rampant rabbit or her boyfriend. So we kind of steer clear from that. It's more about kind of like heroing the products and also heroing an empowering message. It's really frustrating because of the censorship on Instagram as a channel. Like you'll see in our username, we've got like Southampton Sex Toy Boutique, and we've actually put a star in the word sex, which I find super frustrating, but we're just trying to avoid being kind of crawled by Instagram bots and being flagged for inappropriate content. And I don't know if you're familiar with this term of shadow banning.
No, what's that?
Well, I don't know if this is the official term or just what everyone in the kind of sex positive community has kind of dubbed it. And this is particularly for content, for accounts like ours, but also sex workers and other kind of educational sex accounts. You find if you're uploading content which probably might not, it's kind of on the borderline of whether it adheres to Instagram's content policy. Like it is fine for it to be there, but Instagram would probably not want it there. You find your content reach is restricted. So, you know, when you're looking at your analytics as a business, normally you see kind of all the different places your content has been seen, and usually the explore feed will be in there. If you're an account like ours with kind of 10,000 followers, you'll get impressions from the explore, the discover feed, which is where, you know, it's that tab of accounts you're not following, but content Instagram thinks you'll like. So when you've been shadow banned, you don't get any impressions from the explore, the discover feed. You only get impressions from people who already follow you, or when they share it on their story, from the people who see it there. So it's really frustrating. It really limits your organic growth. And that's one thing we're kind of worried about, and kind of slows our progression, I guess, on the channel, which is really frustrating. But because of that, we tend to stick to content which we think is going to be safe. You know, we don't really show bodies in suggestive positions, and we don't show toys that we think would break Instagram's guidelines.
Interesting. And so, like, I mean, images like this, do you think that, like, I would worry that they might class it as explicit? I mean, I don't actually think it is, but
I think
yeah,
because
like, how
it's
careful, where do you draw the line, I suppose?
I think because that picture there, yeah, that is probably as risque as I would go on this account. But because it is a drawing, it tends to be fine. You don't really see that many drawings and interpretations of bodies being deleted. It's more when it's a photograph. So obviously, if that was a photo, that would not be allowed. That would be deleted in an instant. But because it's this kind of artistic impression of bodies, it's okay. And we like to show pictures like that, like showing people with voluptuous bodies just being there, like the body, even though it's showing kind of genitals, they're not being sexualized. It's just women standing there being women. And I think that's another thing we like to do. We like to just show people being people where we can, and bodies not being inherently sexualized just because they're naked. Nudity is perfectly normal.
Yeah. I actually looked earlier, this talking of like normalizing things, it seems to just be the running theme of what you do. As I was saying earlier, the initial image I think that people would have is like, oh, it's this seedy sort of industry, but it is completely normalized, and it's interesting to then think that that's, like, I suppose your whole effort has gone into that. Have you done much work on branding? I mean, I noticed that a lot of the colors are very similar. Is that just kind of a coincidence, or have you actually kind of worked with someone on your branding?
So my boyfriend is a graphic designer. So he has been very instrumental in providing lots of free work for me and helping me to kind of develop a brand. So everything we've done so far has just been us really playing around and seeing what looks good, and trying to make something friendly and approachable. At the minute, we are actually working with an agency who are doing some branding work for us for free in exchange for them being able to use it as part of their portfolio. So I'm super excited about that, and I think that will really help us to have more of like an easily identifiable brand across all of our channels, because while I think it's strong what we have at the minute, I know it could be a lot stronger, so I'm really excited for that.
And on that, so the colors that you chose up there, it kind of fades from the pink to purple. Does that signify anything? Is there any kind of meaning there?
No, just like the colors.
Looks very nice. It's very nice.
Thank
you. You mentioned about having 10,000 followers. How long did it take you to get to 10.8 thousand followers for the business?
So I think we started the account last May, and we got to 10K last month, so just over a year. And again, that's been pretty organically. We haven't done any kind of paid promotions on Instagram. It's just been from people enjoying the content and following us.
And have you noticed that it's become easier over time to start to get them? Because I imagine when you've got 25 followers or something, it's a bit more difficult to get someone to follow.
Yeah, totally. I think that's the thing. Like, the more you have, the more people see it as something reputable and interesting, and the more likely they are to follow. Like I mentioned before, obviously we have the limitations with the kind of shadow banning. So we try and make sure that we have a balance of content on there that is shareable, because the sharing is really the key for us in terms of getting it in front of more eyeballs. So you'll see kind of like the first post on there is funny. So we made a funny post so people can engage with it and share it. The piece of art with the women standing around, people like seeing normal bodies represented, and it's a lovely piece of art that people can share because for art's sake. The piece around Scotland being the first country to make period products accessible and free, that's a piece of news, so people share it because they're excited about the news, and so on and so forth. And then obviously the pictures we put up of our products are for, you know, sales and awareness purposes rather than kind of sharing. So like you'll see on the engagement on the photos, like the ones that are kind of shareable pieces have so many more likes than products.
It's almost 10% of your audience are liking some of these when we go through them.
Yeah,
like
quite strong.
That's really powerful. The other link that you've given us into Instagram, what is this?
Yeah, so this is our Reels section of Instagram. So we've been trying to use Reels to take advantage of Instagram's new functionality, because I think, as we know, Instagram favors people who use their new functionality and provides more impressions. So this is one place where we have seen a few of these manage to get onto the kind of the Reels, the page in Instagram, depending on, you'll see like the ones that have more views are the ones that have typically got onto there. But we've just been trying to use this functionality specifically to show off different products and what they do and show their USPs. And you can directly see that the products that we feature here do actually see an uplift in sales, especially over time as people kind of see more content about them. So this is quite a powerful tool for us.
That's cool. And I imagine, again, there's not going to be anything graphic here. If I click on one of these, I'm not going to have to get my own.
Click on the first one. Yeah, we use these videos to actually show the toy, because it can be quite hard through a static website to actually get an idea of what a product is going to look like in your hand. So these videos just help people understand a little bit better what they can expect from a toy.
Yeah, and also, as you said earlier, like you've really gone not for that whole like big, colourful, veiny kind of penis shape. Like it does look very clean and inoffensive. Really, is probably the best word, I think, to describe some of the products there.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think a lot of the toys are objects where if you were so bold, you could just have them lying around your house. Like you could have them on a shelf in prime display. Like we have lots of glass toys, for example, which are really beautiful. And just basically most of our toys are non-anatomical, they're non-representational of real life bodies, because they don't have to be. So yeah.
And let's talk about your store itself. So when you sent through the things earlier, we've obviously got the Shopify store that you use. And then there's this other store called Hit and Run. Which one should we talk about first, and what's the difference between the two?
So we wanted to create some merchandise. So first of all, because we wanted people to be able to have a tangible piece of self or more, even if they weren't necessarily in the market for toys. You know, like we said before, not everyone wants to buy a toy at any given time. So we wanted to create some merch. We wanted it to have a message that really stood for what we believe in as a company. And obviously what we believe in is wanking. And we created this wanker tee because we wanted people to be able to own the fact that they masturbate on a t-shirt in a really kind of tongue-in-cheek way. So the wanker tee was our first piece of merch, but also it had the kind of added effect of being an easy gift to give to influencers, and also for people to kind of tag us in on social media. So I mean, if you go onto our Instagram tagged photos, you'll see that quite a lot of them are actually people wearing the wanker tee. So yeah, it's just obviously not everyone wants to post a picture of their vibrator or dildo on social media, but people are quite happy to have this kind of sex positive message around wanking. So it worked really nicely. We decided against ordering kind of like loads of cheap t-shirts from China, again, because, you know, we're a small business. We don't want to be holding lots of stock for something like this. We wanted to be accessible in terms of sizing. We wanted to be able to offer it for kind of curvier people and plus size people. And we didn't want to contribute to landfill should they not have been successful. So we found this company called Hit and Run, who are a new company, and they're all about creating merch and clothing responsibly and ethically. They're printed to order, so there's no wastage. They're printed here in the UK, in London. So it does mean they're a little bit more expensive because they're kind of cotton, non-toxic inks, all of that stuff. But for us, it was really important to do this kind of ethically. So yeah, this is our merch, and it's done really well, and I'm really happy with it. And to be honest, I wear it all the time.
It looks great. I think it's fantastic. What's with the upside down wanker?
It's a little bit cheeky. You kind of like, you have to look at it twice to see what it says. And also, you know, if you look down, you can read it, and wanking is all about you. So yeah.
Nice, I like it.
Thank you.
And then let's talk about the store, and kind of, I suppose, before we just get a short tour of it, how long did it take you to build? And is this the first, like, how many iterations can you remember have there been? Because I imagine this wasn't, you didn't just create this and then start selling.
Actually, if we kind of did, like, it
Really?
hasn't changed that much. Obviously, we've expanded the product selection quite a lot, and we've added a lot more content, but at its core, it has stayed pretty much the same up until now. Obviously, as I mentioned before, we are planning like a full redesign with the new branding. So we're also going to implement a new site next year as well. But I shouldn't imagine it will evolve too much. Like, the feedback we've had from customers is they like how simple it is. And actually, you know, lots of stores have lots of bells and whistles and lots of different sales messages all over it and blah, blah, blah. But our site is quite simple in functionality. And I think that just makes it quite simple for the consumer to use too.
So you mentioned that your boyfriend deals with a lot of the design, and did he then
Yes.
design the website, or was it you?
Yeah, we did it together, to be honest. So we use Shopify, and this is one of the standard Shopify themes that we've just adapted to suit our needs. And I think you'll see that, to be honest, there's not that much in the way of design on the store that is custom. Obviously, we have kind of the banners, and everything is themed to colors, and we have like art on our blogs and things like that. But it is very simple. I mean, I am quite lucky because, yeah, obviously full-time designer boyfriend, so everything we do kind of gets, like, I do a lot of it myself, but I always run it past him to get it neatened up beforehand. I'll do something on Photoshop and he'll be like, no, the spacing is terrible. But I also, my background is digital marketing, so and I studied journalism as well, so like in terms of like copy and content creation and like messaging across the site, that's all come from me. So having those two skills kind of just in-house has been really helpful.
So you've got the initial bit, you log in, there's that pop-up asking for your, like, for people's emails. How do you know how effective that is? Do you get many people that sign up? And are you willing to disclose how many people are on your email list?
We've got a few thousand people on our email list, and yeah, I think quite a lot of people use it, but a lot of people use affiliate discount codes. So I think that probably hinders people joining here because they know they've already got a discount code to use. So that's definitely something for us to focus on in the future. But yeah, it does tend to be quite successful.
And while we're on the topic of email marketing, what do you use for that? Do you do much email marketing, and like, what platforms or software do you use?
So I use OmniSend as our CRM email platform. We try and send out one email a week, and then we have our automated flows. So obviously you've got your 10% off email, and there's a little bit of a welcome email flow, and there's a review X amount of days after purchase email. And then aside from that, obviously we send an email every time that we're doing a sale or a promotion. And then also when there's new content on the blog, that tends to be what our emails center around.
And what are the sort of things on the blog? And I'm guessing you said it was about education and things like that. How frequently do you find you have to post?
So at the minute, we're trying to post a new piece of content once a week. I don't always manage to keep to that.
Tough.
Depends what other priorities are in at the minute. And in the beginning, I wrote all of the content myself, but actually probably the last 4 or 5 posts have all been either guest posts or paid pieces of writing from sex writers. So we try again to keep everything either informative, entertaining. Obviously the blog is called Pleasure Ed, it's called Pleasure Education. So rather than being inherently about these kind of serious sex education topics, we try and give people information that will help them to experience more pleasure in their life. So you'll see here, like just on the top row, so we have a story about that a sex writer wrote for us about her dad finding her box of sex toys under her bed, and then it's kind of a heartwarming tale about how he handled that in a really positive manner, and that helped to kind of normalize female pleasure in their household. And then we've got the truth about squirting. Squirting is a very hot topic in the sex world. I think it's Googled an obscene amount. Actually, in my previous job at the Science magazine, an article that just kept on getting organic traffic was one about female ejaculation. So people are interested in this in general, like no matter what business you're in, apparently. So yeah, a piece of content like that is obviously to kind of bust some myths. Rather than taking the angle of like, here's how you can do it to impress your partner, it's about like, here's this thing that your body might be able to do. Like, is it normal? Yes. Is it pleasurable? For some people. And it's just a very like straightforward approach to it rather than sensationalizing it, I suppose.
And how do you find these writers? I mean, do they approach you? Is there a website, a platform to search for them? Because I imagine a lot of businesses, if they're looking to do something similar, but they're not in your niche, like how would they go about doing it?
So I think it's just about building relationships with the people in your industry. Particularly, I suppose Twitter is a really good platform if you're looking to engage with writers and journalists, because they tend to be very active on Twitter and tweet about their work. And if they have like stories that they want you to be involved in and things like that, Twitter is a great place to find that. But yeah, for us, we get kind of people who aren't necessarily writers as a profession, but enjoy writing, will pitch a guest post to us that they're happy to write for free or in exchange for a voucher, just because they want to be published on our platform. And then you have kind of on the other end of the scale, professional writers who again see our platform as kind of a place they want to be on, and they'll write a paid piece of writing for you. But you can absolutely just reach out to people, and as long as you're polite and you acknowledge that they probably want payment and you're not expecting someone to do something for free, especially in your early days, I think it's absolutely fine to just do lots of Googling and lots of Twitter research and reach out to writers.
And what do you search when you're, I suppose, looking for writers like that? Would it literally be, I don't know, sex toy journalist, or I mean, like, or specific like publications that you already follow?
Yeah, I suppose for me, maybe it would be different to other industries. I don't know, because like people are generally, you see them because their posts gain traction, and then you become aware of them, so you follow them. And it's the same with kind of written press. You can see who's written an article in a magazine or on a website, and then you can follow them on their social channels and begin a relationship by just engaging with them and sharing their work. And then eventually when the time comes, or when they have a relevant story for you, or you have a piece of work for them, you can reach out. And it is really about building that relationship, I suppose.
And I can see here on it that you do link through to them. So will that link through to this person's bio? That's cool. There's
We put a bio at the bottom of the article as well, with some links back to their social channels and stuff like that.
Is that part of what the writer asks for, or do you offer that?
We just offer that because I think it's nice to show that it's being written by a reputable person, and it's also, I just believe that when you're working with someone, you should both have each other's best interests at heart. So why wouldn't I want to promote a writer who's contributed a piece in the same way that they'll then go on and share the piece from our website to their social followers? And it's just, I think there's a lot to be said about just being friendly and building relationships with people and not just treating people as commodities. I know it sounds obvious, but
No, it needs to be said, doesn't it? I mean, yeah. And then as an accountant and a business owner, I wonder, like, how much roughly does an article typically cost? It obviously might be different from niche to niche, but is there, what's the sort of going rate?
I think it varies quite a lot, actually. So for, say, 1,000 words, you might be expected to pay anywhere between kind of £100 and £400. And I think each writer has their own individual rates that will be based on how experienced they are, where they've been published. But again, you will find that some people who don't write for a career will be happy to write something for free. Or, you know, if someone does offer to write something for free, we'll typically offer them a £25 or a £20, I can't remember, voucher for our store. Because at the end of the day, I think someone is putting some love into something for you. So it's nice to reward them for that. But I guess it also depends as well, like, how big is your audience? What can you offer this writer? You know, if you've got 100,000 followers on Instagram and the same amount of traffic to your website, maybe they'll be willing to do it for a lot cheaper in exchange for that kind of promotion. But if you're just starting out and you're small, I think it makes sense to just pay people their rate, pay them what they ask for. If you can't afford it, be honest. Don't offend them, just say, look, this is how much money we can afford to pay you, and they'll say yes or no. It's kind of as simple as that.
I find it interesting. A lot of what you're saying there, to me, is common sense, and it seems like it's very sensible. But common sense isn't that common. How is it that you've kind of learned all of this? Is it just stuff that you kind of knew? Is it through experience? Do you have mentors that you've worked with that have kind of helped you in business?
I mean, no, to be honest, I don't. Like, none of my friends really own their own business. Like, a lot of this I've just found through trial and error. I mean, obviously the marketing stuff I know because it's my profession, but the business stuff was totally alien to me. And it took a lot of research, a lot of just like trawling the internet, a lot of doing it. Sometimes you do stuff wrong, but you as long as it's not a very costly mistake, it doesn't really matter. And you just have to keep on trying, keep on learning. Like, there's a lot of information on the internet. Obviously it's not necessarily all good, but I guess, like, I think in the beginning, I spent a lot of time doing everything myself. And my advice to someone else who is starting a business to be like, don't be afraid to get help. And also don't be afraid to like pay experts to help you as well. Like, if it's something that you're not clued up on, because it will save you a lot of time in the long run.
Yeah. And I suppose on that note, on saving time, one of the last questions I like to ask people, but I think we need to ask now, is if you redid all of this, what have you learned that you would do differently, that you would, in order to save that time to kind of get to this point a bit faster?
I think what I just said really about speaking to experts, like, a lot of the stuff that gives me a bit of a headache is the stuff like accounting and business processes. I spent so long trying to figure out like what kind of business setup I should have, and I don't know, things like buying stock. It just seemed like at the beginning like such a headache, and maybe if I'd reached out to more people within the industry already, perhaps, or people who'd started businesses, I would have been able to get some kind of tangible answers on those things a little bit quicker. And then I get my journey is going to be different to anyone else's, I guess, because obviously I didn't really have the imperative of like having to make a profit within a certain amount of time, because I was working full time and I had that income to sustain me. So I've done it in a really kind of like slow, sustainable way. but maybe that isn't right. Maybe I should have invested in marketing upfront and got to this point a little bit quicker. But I don't regret it. I know I could have done it quicker, but I don't necessarily regret having taken the slow route.
You sell on Shopify, is that right?
Yeah.
Why is it that you chose Shopify over any other platform? And also, what apps, or do you use any apps to kind of integrate with it?
Yeah, I use Shopify because it just seems to be the most intuitive. There's a lot of functionality and it's very user friendly. Like, I've never ran a shop before or really like worked in the back end of an e-commerce business. So even without having that experience, like coming into it, it was all very simple. You don't have to spend a lot of money up front on like design and themes, because there are a lot of free ones you can choose from and just modify like I did. But also there's a lot of experts for Shopify as well. So if you've never worked on the web, on a website or anything like that, like you can get help quite easily. And it was quite a simple decision for me. I just decided I wanted to do it, did the free trial and stuck with it. I couldn't really be bothered to try lots of different stores when this one just seemed to be the best for what I needed. We use quite a few apps actually, and I regularly try new apps and disable them and then try a different one to try and find the best ones for us, because the costs can rack up quite quickly if you're plugging in lots of different apps. But there's a few free ones we use, like there's one for reviews which is free, which we use, so people can just leave product reviews, and that it's such a simple thing, but like I think the reviews do half the job of selling a toy a lot of the time.
Where do the reviews go? Do they go actually on the product, on the listing?
Yeah, they're right at the bottom of the product. So I mean, if you look at our toy, the Satisfy Pro 2, I think that one's got probably like 30 reviews or something, and they're pretty much all 5-star, and they do the job of selling the product without us having to to continue harping on about it.
That's interesting, because there's always, I feel like every couple of months in the news there'll be something about how many fake reviews there are and how many websites do have fake reviews. So are these all reviews, like, so the 22, so using that product that you said, the 22 reviews that you've got there, they're all just tied to your store and your product, or are they tied to the product and other stores? How does it?
I think they're all anyone can leave a review, but we're not really offering anyone an incentive to leave a review if they're not already a customer. So I'm pretty sure they're all genuine. I certainly haven't left any fake ones, so I'm going to assume they're all genuine. We offer an incentive of a £20 voucher to people who have bought a product. We send an email like 2 weeks after purchase. So I think that's kind of what drives a lot of the reviews. But some people, I think, just review it because they're genuinely shocked at how much they enjoyed the toy. So they leave a review, which is great. So yeah, I definitely recommend installing that if your theme doesn't already have a product review function. I'm trying to think what else. Oh, we have like a back in stock alert so that people can sign up, because particularly the products that we're not drop shipping, obviously they come in and out of stock a little bit more often than the drop shipping toys. So the back in stock alerts work really well to help people keep abreast of that. We also have a pre-order functionality, which again drives quite a lot of revenue. We have we have one product, for example, which is a topical body product, like a cream, that people like to buy repeatedly. And that sells out quite quickly because we import it from a different country. So that gets a lot of pre-orders, and actually having pre-orders cuts down quite a lot on customer queries about when things are going to be back in stock. So it saves me a lot of time in not having to go back to those people and telling them. So yeah, I recommend that if you might have kind of issues with stock management or flow. We've tried quite a lot of different marketing tools on the product over the year. We tried kind of like a hot product, this is how many have been sold. I think it seemed to increase people looking at the product but not necessarily buying it. And we
Is that one
tried.
of those ones where it flashes up and says like, oh, 24 people have looked at this in the last 10 minutes or something like that?
Yeah, but I think we did it based on buying it. So for some products which sell a lot, obviously it's really impressive, but then on some products we only sell a couple a month, so it's not really that exciting seeing 2 people bought this in the last 30 days.
I never believe those things. Whenever you go on a website and see that, I always feel like it's a lie anyway. That I've never
This one was legit.
yeah, especially if it says 2 in a month or something like that.
But yeah, there's so many apps on there. Just look for which ones have good reviews, and most of them have kind of free, like a free trial or like a quota, where if your shop isn't massive, you'll probably get away with using it for free for a certain amount of time.
Are there any that your store couldn't live without?
So we use an app called Affiliately for our affiliate tracking, and yeah, we couldn't live without that. That is a big, probably our biggest marketing channel. So it works in that affiliates sign up, we approve each one based on whether they fit the brand. So we tend to approve everyone unless they're just like a spammy coupon account, basically. We give them a 10% voucher code that they can give to their followers or their readers, as well as a unique link. If someone makes a sale based off their recommendation, the affiliate gets a 10% commission on that. So the total acquisition cost, I suppose, would be 20% if you include the discount that people are taking. But it works really well for us. And it's a nice way of like working with influencers and creators on like a long-term basis, because obviously the more they put into it, the more that they get out. And gifting is great, but you can't guarantee that just because you've gifted someone something that they're going to post about it, because they might decide they don't like it or they don't want to. But with the affiliate scheme, I think people tend to find reasons to talk about you to keep kind of the revenue coming in for them as well. And you're not asking people to work for free, which I'd always think is a good thing.
You mentioned earlier, just going on a segue here, about PR. And I know that you are now working with a kind of PR firm or agent. What is it that they do? And yeah, what does a PR person do?
Yeah, okay. So I guess PR is quite a broad term, and people might generally think of it as being kind of a traditional kind of marketing and PR like platform. So it can span from anything from getting mentions in newspapers through to kind of online and digital, through to influencer, depending on what your PR agency or person does. I guess it typically falls into categories of either like product placement. So just getting, for example, it's the Christmas period now. So getting your products into Christmas lists of top products. It can be more of a kind of a thought leadership piece. So positioning you as the owner of the company as an expert in your area. So for me, that would obviously be on topics of like sex and sexuality and toys. Things like talking to people on YouTube channels and podcasts and getting those kind of guest appearances. So it's anything that drives a buzz about your business and gets you in front of eyeballs. Obviously, the ambition is to drive more sales and to increase brand awareness. For us, as obviously a very small company, it's very important that everything that we do drives sales, which is why we've focused on the kind of affiliate scheme up to now, because it's a tangible, like you spend X amount, but you definitely get X in return. PR, I suppose, is a little bit more of an unknown. You're investing in kind of your brand reputation. And I think now for us, it's got to the point where, as we said before, there are a lot of companies in this industry. So what sets us apart from all the other sex toy retailers? And a part of that is like having a face and having me like being willing to speak about these and being so passionate about it. So that's something that I want to try and capitalize on a little bit more, because it happens organically. But you know, I think PR is a really good skill if you don't have much budget to develop yourself, if you can. it's just, even if it's just kind of reaching out and emailing like editors and magazines and seeing if they're interested, but you can only do so much yourself. So I think it's got to a point for me now where professional help is hopefully going to help take us to a new business level.
And my understanding as well is that some of these people already have relationships with the editors or the people that are running these lists. So an email from them is going to be way more powerful than like a cold call or an email out of the blue saying, hey, can you feature my product?
Exactly. And you can imagine that journalists and editors get hundreds of emails probably every day. So for it to come from someone they trust is instantly going to be just much more effective. It's not that you shouldn't try, like you absolutely should try, but there are ways to go around it. And you just need to remember that whoever's on the end of it is a real person. So if you're just like blasting out your email to 20 people about your product saying how amazing it is, you have to consider like, why did they care in particular? And that's the kind of expertise that a PR person can help you with.
So final question, I'm aware we've run over. Do you remember your first sale?
Yes, of course.
What was that like? How long did it take you to get there?
Well, it was kind of cheating because my first sale was a friend.
Do you remember your first real sale?
I mean, that she paid, so it was still a sale. Yeah, I do. I guess I was quite lucky from the beginning because one of my friends herself is an influencer, so she really rallied behind me at the beginning. So she bought something and then also shared it, was like, look what my friend's doing. So instantly that was kind of like a boost for us that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So I think the first real sale, I think it was probably maybe a few days after we launched, maybe a day or two. So my friend bought as soon as we opened straight away, and I think the first real sale was like a day or two after.
And was that drop shipping, or was that actually that you fulfilled it from your house?
I was at home wrapping it up and putting it in a box and sending it out. Because we bought everything ourselves for the first few months and fulfilled them all ourselves. So every sale felt very personal and tangible and like exciting.
Well, on that, I think that's a great note to end it. Is there anything else you'd like to add or leave to the internet out there?
No, I mean, just if you've got a business idea and you're passionate about it, just do it. It's the perfect time. And yeah, just do it.
Just do it. Fantastic. Well, yeah, thank you so much, Poppy. Yeah, we will stay in touch anyway. We'll end it there.
Oh, we have. You're my accountant.
And there we have it. That's the end of the episode. I hope you enjoyed hearing what Poppy had to say and finding out about how she runs her business. If you've got any interest in any of the products that she talks about or the website itself, we'll put links in the show notes below. If you enjoyed the episode, please leave a like, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. Look forward to seeing you again on the next episode of E-commerce Joe.